Hello and welcome back to the 61st episode of the All Guy Could Disrupt podcast with your host, Bennett and Leon. Of course, this is part 2, by the way, of this episode. And of course, we have Ashley down here.
Hey!
All right. And then we're just, of course, resuming our episode about the need to protest, to voice our opinions and thoughts and our anger and frustrations with the government and how they have really failed us. So let's go ahead and continue that. Let me share my screen with you guys. All right, so we're going to watch once again that video that I mentioned in the previous episode about Occupy Wall Street and how this was our latest, at least the American example of protesting, you know? So that's what...
In comparison to the ones we were watching yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is also a really interesting one. This is, like I mentioned, Americans doing this. Gil mentioned that they kind of behave a little differently, but there are also a lot of similarities. So let's just go ahead and watch, and then we'll see where it goes from here.
Dear Americans, this July 4th, dream of insurrection against corporate rule. Occupy Wall Street. In mid-July, counterculture magazine Adbusters follows its tweet with a call to action. Occupy Wall Street, September 17th. Bring tent. Anonymous throws its support behind Occupy, and the movement's momentum takes off via social media. Citizens travel from across the country to meet up with activists in New York as Mayor Michael Bloomberg prepares for a protest. 2,000 protesters descend on Lower Manhattan. The New York City Police Department blocks Wall Street, and the protesters move to Zuccotti Park, where a culture of consensus takes root. Protesters camp for the night, and then for the week. Little does anyone know, the occupation is just beginning. Protesters received scant media coverage during the first week, but a few cans of pepper spray, an army of citizen journalists, and close to 1,000 arrests are about to change everything.
We saw in the video you being sort of surrounded and just sprayed in the face.
Police test boundaries and pile hundreds into paddy wagons, and the world begins to watch.
Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, Wall Street.
Wall Street. Obviously, I've heard of it. I've seen it on television.
New Occupy camps form around the world. Everyone gets fed, and libraries flourish. People want to express.
Notice that this happened under an Obama presidency, you know? They were asking him about this. The journalists were asking him about this. So very interesting to know. What do you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really, it's telling how similar both parties are.
And then also, you can see here, Bloomberg was also the mayor at the time, and now we know that he
was running for president in the Democratic Party.
Exactly. So it's really interesting to look at this retrospectively, just because of all these big names that are coming up once again, and it's re-election time for the presidency. So, and I put the pieces together here. So
Themselves, says Bloomberg, and as long as they obey the laws, we allow them to. On October 15th, the so-called Day of Rage, impassioned citizens march in more than 80 cities around the world. Protests in Rome turn violent and dominate headlines everywhere. Back in New York, peaceful Citibank customers are arrested after closing their accounts.
What are you doing?
Look, are you serious? That's absolutely crazy.
For closing their accounts.
I know. If this wasn't recorded, you wouldn't believe
it. That's
literally.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
Journalist Caitlin Curran is fired for holding a sign. A pepper sprayer is disciplined, and 1%ers post messages of solidarity. Meanwhile, pressure mounts for city officials to control protests. Dressed in riot gear and armed with tear gas and rubber bullets, police raid Occupy Oakland before dawn on October 25th. Headlines blast news about Scott Olson, an Iraq War vet injured by police. His name trends across Twitter. Days later, Oakland protesters strike back with a general strike. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, allegations of sexual abuse in camps surface, prompting Zuccotti Park protesters to create a women-only tent. 10 days later, it's eviction day in New York City. Credentialed journalists are refused press privileges, severely limiting eviction coverage.
I'm filming. I have DCPD press passes. Let's go. Relax.
Occupations in other cities around the world are evicted. On November 17th, mobilized by crushed camps and torn tents, protesters around the globe turn out for 2-month anniversary celebrations. More than 200 are arrested in New York, including journalists. Feels like Turkmenistan, not USA, tweets Nick Kristof, but not even he was prepared for what happened next.
So like this was also around the time that like that kind of movement or like people started realizing how much of a police state the United States is around this time, because they saw how like the police were militarizing, coming out with like all these like gear and riot shields and like doing all this like insane shit, right? Crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. Our law enforcement has been militarizing for a very long time.
Yeah, but very interesting to note that it was also like...
And this is 2011. I mean, that's 9 years ago. Believe it or not. 9 years ago was the last time something big like this happened.
And it was like a tipping point for America, especially financially, like in more ways than one. So, and we're now at that point again. We've also reached it, and of course, we're going to go to lower lows. We have yet to reach those kinds of the depths when it comes to the economy and whatnot. So, let's go ahead and see what else pissed these people off enough to do this in 2011.
Not everyone, however, empathizes.
Go get a job right after you take a bath.
With temperatures dropping.
Like, how disconnected is that? Like that response.
That's the best word,
like,
disconnected, exactly.
Literally, like, when you see all these people out here with all these signs saying, like, what they're angry about and what they're literally telling you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is look and read. It's not hard. It's never been hard to figure out what we want or what we need. They just are unwilling to do it because they're bought and paid for.
Well,
right or wrong?
Definitely, 100%. And I have heard that phrase so often. Go get a job, or people who have jobs don't have time to protest. That people who choose to not protest in times where that is needed are, to me, people who choose to be a part of this establishment. People who choose to be a part of this system that they know is not working for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, that's irresponsible. Why would you not want to be part of something that is going to benefit you and benefit the majority of people around you? And exactly, if you just read these signs, you listen to what they're saying. They're not asking for things that are outrageous. They're asking for things like a living wage in comparison to these people who are not listening to them and making millions and billions of dollars.
Absolutely. It's really insane to see what kind of went on, like all the how the police kind of acted in that regard, how the government reacted. President Obama let everybody get foreclosed on. Over 5 million houses got foreclosed on during that time. People were pissed, and they absolutely should have been. And then we need to replicate their kind of actions. That's what I think. Well, let's go ahead and continue the video.
Protesters find other ways to occupy. Occupy our homes. Occupy the primaries. Occupy Congress. Occupy the SEC.
Love that.
Meanwhile, Occupy's income inequality message goes mainstream. 2012 opens with one of Occupy's most violent encounters. New arrests top 400 in Oakland. On March 17th, protesters streamed back into Zuccotti Park, celebrating the 6-month anniversary of the Occupy movement. After night falls, however, police declare the park closed. You want to get arrested? Asks Bloomberg. We'll accommodate you. March 24th, Occupy participants march to Union Square, declaring, "Let freedom spring." 7 months of protests. Millions of tweets. 7,000 arrests. More than 100 U.S. cities. Occupy Wall Street.
Oops. So great video, right? I loved it. I think it was a great overall look at how the Occupy movement started. But your thoughts on how everything ended as well, knowing what we know, looking back at it now.
I think looking back at it now, it makes me kind of frustrated because look at all that 7 months and what situation are we in now? The same thing. And also watching this and being reminded of that crisis really makes me worried about Biden possibly being our next president and having all of these people being foreclosed on, renters not being able to pay their rent. It doesn't make me hopeful that we're going to have somebody who's going to say, oh, no worries, we'll help you out. No, actually, you can just get your ass on the street. Sorry. But this does make me hopeful that this is what social media can do. This is how easy it is to mobilize.
Absolutely.
So that is hopeful. Definitely.
It is. And those people definitely, the protesters for Occupy Wall Street definitely took advantage of social media to organize and meet up in places as you saw, this rippled across the world.
Over 100 U.S. cities, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they said millions and millions of tweets. I mean,
that's pretty powerful. And that's the message, of course. They got it. Newt Gingrich, top Republican, got it. Even though he completely missed the point, he saw it though. Which was the point. He got their attention, or they got his attention. I also want to talk about this article from Huffington Post the HuffPost about how New York removed Bernie Sanders from the primaries, or from the primary ballot when they have to vote. So, as we know, the Democratic Party has time and time again shown that they are willing to do whatever it takes to not let a progressive win, but now we're seeing how far they're willing to kick him while he's down and not even let him gain the influence that he gained in 2016 to influence the party platform like he did then.
Yeah.
Because of his actions and his delegates, he actually got those super delegate system away from that. It was going to come to the second ballot. It was still there. They still got it in, but he made it more democratic, at least in the very beginning.
Definitely.
So they were not allowed to have that win. So your thoughts on that?
I remember when you first, I was working, I think, when this happened, so I wasn't paying attention to the news, but you had messaged me, and I just figured that it was something like, oh, coronavirus, they're postponing, whatever. And then he you send me the memo that the Sanders campaign sends out to send out to everyone. And I was just absolutely, and I think you sent me the article too, I was just absolutely stunned that this is this legal? I mean, I can't believe that they're allowed to do this. They're able to take away any possible, any chance of there being a convention because he's not able to get any more delegates. No one is allowed to get any delegates. Anyone else who is still on the ballot, which was the majority still. We were talking earlier about not only is Bernie Sanders suing, but Andrew Yang is suing. Tulsi Gabbard, I think you said, is suing. So I just can't believe that they would take this drastic of a step, especially when mail-in ballots are totally a thing and is definitely an option with the current situation in the pandemic. I mean, they could have just given people a longer time to vote and mail in their ballot, but no, we're going to cancel. This is clearly not about the pandemic. This is about getting Sanders off the ballot.
Exactly. 100%. This is a political ploy.
Mhm.
And that's what this part of the article kind of mentions here. Sanders and his allies want to accumulate enough convention delegates to be able to influence the Democratic Party, the platform, and the rules. The Biden campaign has indicated it is open to working with Sanders on a compromise over convention delegates. But that's really just fluff. That's why the Democratic Party is also taking steps to undermine democracy itself by
Well,
not letting the voters let their voice be heard. And that's why all these campaigns are suing them, because they're not letting the voters voice their opinions, and they already had previously fulfilled all the requirements that they needed to do to get on the ballot. There should be no reason in hell why they would be kicked off now.
yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense. Your thoughts?
Well, just this phrase, compromise over convention delegates. You don't compromise over convention delegates. You earn them with your votes. So I don't even understand that phrase at all.
And then let's talk about this part as well, because this is important. This is what enabled them to remove Bernie Sanders and the other candidates from the ballot. And it looks like it was a provision in New York's new budget that empowered the state's Board of Elections to remove those candidates.
Which is also kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a total ploy, and they're doing it in broad daylight, which is the worst thing. So
The worst thing is that mainstream media outlets are not covering this. That this is not something that the majority of the public is seeing.
100%.
Because I think if more people were seeing this, they would be outraged also. And if people were making a bigger deal about this, instead of talking about how Biden is innocent from his sexual allegations, then maybe, I mean, I just feel like the news, they're just not reporting on things that are actually important to our democracy.
And what's really important for you guys to also remember is that, like, you shouldn't get really attached to the candidate, like,
Clearly.
literally, like us, for example, like as much as I love Bernie Sanders, I'm 100% willing to tell him to fuck off if he tells me to vote for Joe Biden, and I'm willing to do it 100% every day of the week. Why? Because he himself told us that if I ever tell you to vote for anyone, don't listen to me, so and because he wants all of our voices heard. That's why he said that originally. Recently, of course, we know he's kind of been backtracking. We're seeing a different kind of Bernie Sanders in recent years, unfortunately. But I also kind of want to reference this part of the article here. Coincidentally, one of the co-chairs of the Bernie Sanders campaign, a quote by former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. She said, "Their decision is bad. It's bad for the Democratic Party, and it's bad for democracy. It has a chilling effect on democracy as we know it, because the ability of the people to weigh in was stripped from them before they had an opportunity to cast a ballot." And of course, like, she's 100% right.
Yeah,
100% right.
definitely.
And that's why they're suing the State Board of Elections in the state of New York for that purpose, because they're suing for the voters to have their say. And like we also mentioned, it says that this is also, of course, going to prevent him from accumulating those delegates to affect the party platform. And it looks like Jeff Weaver also said that today's decision by the state of New York Board of Elections is an outrage, a blow to American democracy, and must be overturned by the DNC.
Which will never happen.
Absolutely. That's a pie in the sky.
If anything, they colluded together to make this happen.
Absolutely. Literally. But it's very upsetting. So let's see. What Sanders supporters want is essentially a beauty contest that, given the situation with the public health emergency that exists now, seems to be unnecessary and indeed frivolous.
That's exactly what I knew they were going to blame it on. the COVID pandemic. I don't understand how you can blame it on that though, when what I said, mail-in ballots are a complete legitimate option right now. Give people more time to get their vote, to get their ballots back, and have everybody do mail ballots. I think that there are, of course, some people who would not vote, but you have that either way.
Mm-hmm. And also, don't let the fucking UPS go bankrupt.
Yes.
You sick fucks. Like, let's save them. Let's not save these all these giant corporations that don't need it. That's why all these companies you're seeing in the news, they're returning their the money that they got back. Why? Because they don't need it. They can function without it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it shouldn't be up to the taxpayer to do those to lift that burden.
Absolutely.
That's a lie. That's one of the
crazy
biggest
that
lies.
you have to have corporations give back their money so that other people can get money.
Yeah.
That should tell you how much money is going to corporations. I mean, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. We don't even really need this, guys, but thanks.
Literally. But I think we get the point here. The point was that the Democratic Party, in conjunction with the New York State Board of Elections, I'm sure Andrew Cuomo kind of had his say in this, along with other voices I'm sure were involved in this. Someone somewhere along the line thought it was a great idea to undermine democracy, undermine the will of the voters, and take your voices away. Which, once again, this is not normal. You know, like, this doesn't happen. If you look back, this shit does not happen.
There should be outrage. There should be. You
shouldn't be out in the streets with your protesting to get a fucking haircut.
They are lucky we are in the middle of a pandemic.
You should be out protesting. If anything, I'm not promoting you guys to break social distancing rules or anything like that.
No.
But you should definitely go out and protest for the right reasons. Protest for the injustices that are going on in our country from the government. Mm-hmm. They are robbing us blind.
$1,200 is nothing.
That's a Band-Aid, and people are happy, super happy about getting that. I mean, yes, it might be a chunk of change, but that is literally a chunk of change, like pennies, crumbs, compared to what they're giving to giant corporations.
Absolutely.
Like that, right?
And unemployment benefits, the same thing. You think it's nice now, that's not going to last. Number one, that hasn't been guaranteed to last. And number two, that is still a Band-Aid compared to what they're giving to corporations. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And then you also have other places like warehouses, and we were just talking about the May Day protest starting May 1st.
Yes,
you have all these corporations who have millions and millions of dollars, and yet they cannot provide their employees with protective gear, like just basic face masks and gloves. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And that's why they have organized, the unions have helped organize this movement or this strike for the workers to walk out of work come May 1st or May
tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys are listening to this, if you guys are watching this, please do your part and do not buy anything from any of those companies. Even if you see this at a later date, just don't buy anything. Try to not buy something from these companies until you hear that they are doing better with their workers and the strike is over or whatnot.
And what are those companies, Ben?
Okay, so those companies are Target, Walmart, Instacart, Shipped. Am I missing anyone?
Amazon?
Oh, wow, I didn't say Amazon. Amazon. Whole Foods, I believe, as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Whole Foods. I said Shipped, I think. That's it, I think. Yeah, so that's already a decent list. Big millions of shoppers shop at those.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Amazon alone.
If they want to give all this money to those corporations, then they can afford for people to walk out. So
Absolutely. I remember reading one time that Amazon was down for 30 minutes and they had lost $40 million in sales in those 30 minutes. So just imagine, like, and then also, side note, Jeff Bezos, his personal wealth increased by $24 billion during from the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic.
24 billion?
24 billion. He was
His
already
net worth?
his net worth. He was
No,
already
stop.
he was already over 100 billion. He is now way above that. Now, like, reaching where he was before, getting close to it at least. Before he was at 150 something. Now, and then of course he divorced his wife. She took a 30 or something, and then now he has probably 120 or something billion.
That is disgusting. That's just disgusting. $24 billion he made in what, 2-3 months?
But while his workers, like, that's the thing, you know?
Exactly. While his workers don't have masks, don't have gloves, are making shit pay, don't have good benefits. I'm so confused right now. How do you live with yourself? That's what I want to know. How do you live with yourself? How much money is too much money before you just, I mean, why wouldn't you want to give it to people? I don't get it.
And then people will start they will say, like, oh yeah, he donated $100 million to the food pantries or whatever, so they can, like, disperse food during this time. Like, yeah, that's dope. Like, that's amazing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, that's awesome too, you know? But that's nothing in comparison. Like, he should be completely overhauling his system. Like, he is in charge of a massive company that has a lot of resources. He himself is the richest man in the world. The things that you can do when you have that kind of money and that kind of power is immense in this world. I mean, we know for a fact the oligarchs are the ones in charge of this country and this world, right? And when one of the oligarchs are in that position, they get to do pretty much whatever they want.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like, we can push them. They can do these things.
Well, and the same thing with, like, the May Day stuff. I feel like, you know, like we were saying, we can't really march right now. And when I say they're lucky we're in a pandemic, I just mean that they're lucky that we're not able to take to the streets right now, because I think that is something that is needed. It's something that we need to have some sort of visible sign of this is undemocratic and we are not going to stand for it, because this is, we're supposed to be a democratic society, and this is clearly a blow to our democracy. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done.
Absolutely. So I 100% agree with your idea to, of course, go out and march and stuff, as long as it's not during this time. But what I think would be really powerful is something to do, like, online, start some kind of movement that would give a lot of attention to the struggles and the frustrations that a lot of people are feeling right now, of course. The people that, like us, want to take to the streets to voice our opinion, to take our yellow vests out or whatever, you know?
Virtual protest, though.
Exactly. So I think that we're working on something. We would love
surprises to come.
Yeah, we're brainstorming some ideas to help. But once again, guys, make sure that you do your part. Let your representatives know, your elected representatives know what you are, how you are thinking, what you're feeling about what's going on, and everything that you're learning on this podcast. Please take it to heart. We are not trying to be biased. We're just trying to tell you the truth. We are trying to highlight the things, the injustices that are going on a daily basis in the government and politics. And you see these things that are happening in broad daylight, things
that get swept right under the rug.
Exactly. And like, of course, if you want to bring up the coronavirus crisis again, a massive transfer of wealth that hasn't happened since the Great Depression, really. So, really extremely amazing times to be alive. So let's do our part. Let's work together. We need to stand together during this time to show them that we are strong enough to stand alone. We will do whatever it takes to take back our democracy. You can take away our courts, you can take away the presidency, you can take away the Senate and the House from us.
You can't take our vote.
Exactly.
Or our voice.
Exactly. So that's when we're going to take to the streets. If Bernie Sanders doesn't step up for us, if AOC is not willing to say this shit, we will. So it's up to us, guys. Let's do it. All right, let's end it here, guys. Thank you so much again for listening to this episode. Your word of mouth is our oxygen. We would love to hear back from you. Follow us on Twitter at Disruptor Podcast. Follow us on our YouTube, also at the Oligarchy Disruptor Podcast. Our Facebook at the same thing. Instagram
at the Disruptor Podcast.
Exactly, same as our Twitter. So once again,
follow us on everything.
Yeah, guys, we have a website as well. Check it out. You'll find that on our Facebook page. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.